Hello and welcome to Synchronicity Talk Radio for your mind, body, and soul. Thanks so much for joining us today. You might be listening on CITR 101.9 FM in Vancouver, where we broadcast from unceded Musqueam territory, or you might be watching on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/spiritual show, or you might be listening online at CITR.ca, cosmicdimensions.com, empowerradio.com, or on the Co-Creator Network. And as I always say, wherever in space or time you're listening from, thank you so much for joining us today. So we are speaking today with Shivani Howe, and she is from the Ishtadev Niwas Yoga Center and Farm. And it is an ashram and a farm, and they do a bunch of stuff with yoga. They're near Kimberley, British Columbia, in a very small town called Tata Creek. And
right.
we'll be speaking with her in just a second. And I actually heard about Shivani from Tamara Veach, who is the co-author of One Great Year. She was posting for their fundraising patronage program on her Facebook page. And there was a note there about how they do outreach for people suffering from PTSD, which if you're a regular listener of the show, you know that I kind of have struggled with some symptoms of PTSD. And so I thought this would be a perfect topic for the show. So welcome to the show, Shivani.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for being with us. So you are up in, is it Tata or Tata Creek?
It's Tata Creek.
Tata Creek. And that is near Kimberley, BC. And you're actually in the same time zone as Alberta. So you're pretty far away from us here in Vancouver. But tell us a little bit about how Ishtadev Niwas Farm and Yoga Center came to be.
Well, I had, when I was doing my teacher training and living in Toronto, back in the 2003, 2004 time lot, I started having dreams about living in a forest and kind of this, I'd never been to an ashram at that stage, but it was like an ashram, and it was where people came together to grieve and to remember their hearts. It was a very heart-centered place, and it was a place where people came to heal and remember their beauty. And it was at the time that I was doing my teacher training with my teacher, Ananda Shakti Saraswati, who's from Sananda Yoga in Toronto. And as I went through this process of this teacher training, this dream kept coming up and up and up. And I went down to Costa Rica for a couple of months, and then I moved up to Vancouver, and then I was invited to go and connect to a lineage in India from the Bihar School of Yoga. And after a couple of years of going there and just really connecting to the teachings of yoga and how they were experienced there and how they were taught there, and I said to the head Swami, I have this reoccurring dream about building a retreat center, and I think it's like an ashram, but I'm not a Swami, and I don't really know if it's in my ego or if it's in my highest good, and I'm ignorant and I have no discernment as to which one of it is that. And if you ego, I'll drop it like a hotcake, and I'll just let it go. And if it's my dharma, if it's actually what I'm supposed to be here to do, I'll put everything I have into it. And she kind of sort of like looked into the ether, and she was like, you should do it. And I was like, well, okay, like where shall I do it? Because I live in Vancouver, and I had just got engaged, and like, where do you want me to go? And she's like, well, where do you want to go? And I'm like, well, can I go home to New Zealand? And she's like, no. And I was like, okay, well, can I go to Mount Shasta? And she was like, no. I was like, okay, where do you want me to go? She's like, what's 12 hours inland from Vancouver? I was like, I have no idea. It's like the Rocky Mountains. Like, it's like way over the other side of BC is about 12 hours. And she's like, go there and you will find where you need to be, and the divine will speak to you. And so we ended up coming out here multiple times, and we ended up having just these crazy esoteric experiences, nothing like I have ever experienced before or since, of nature itself guiding us to be here, of like double rainbows and rain changing frequency while I was singing to a river, and golden veils of light, and you couldn't see around you except this light that was enshrouding us. And it was crazy. So we went back to India and we told the same Swami these experiences, and she said, that's where you go. So we moved to the area, and then through more magic and more auspiciousness, we ended up being guided to this property where we are now, and it's 40 acres in the Purcell Mountains, and it's glorious and completely secluded. We're completely off the grid here, and we have a little hobby farm with some goats, chickens, a couple of dogs, a couple of cats, a beautiful big veggie garden, and we hold space for people. We hold space for people that are healthy and well, and we hold space for people that are going through really deep transformation, all from a yogic perspective.
Wow. So I'm curious, if you're off the grid, how do you have internet access?
Well, we have solar panels. So we have electricity, and then we have this cool little satellite dish outside that is connected to the router. And so we have satellite internet.
Wow. Cool. Very cool. Mm-hmm. So wow, that's like, I'm just imagining, because I have this dream. I would love to be off the grid too, and live up where you're at, and then I start thinking about all like the real estate prices and da-da-da-da. But you said it seems like, I mean, I don't think I'm guided to open an ashram, but I imagine it just kind of, everything unfolded the way it was supposed to.
It was really like I had ever had. I mean, I had a very small amount. I'm like talking less than $50,000, which was tied up in an apartment in Fairview Slopes, and literally like we got less than 50,000 out of this, 900 square foot apartment there. And when we found the property here, because it was a private, they allowed us through legal agreements and contracts to lease the property to the value of that $30,000 that we had. So we paid them $30,000 and we leased the property for 2 years, which gave us permission to build a little cottage. And then when we built the cottage on our own, literally physically ourselves built the cottage, and Big borrowed, did not steal the materials, and put it all together with literally what we could get, paycheck to paycheck, what could be donated, what people didn't want anymore. And we built this little cottage with a teaching room in it, and the equity from to what it was valued at with this little cottage on was enough for a down payment. So we didn't even really have the money to buy the property. It was so serendipitous in that, we sold the apartment in Vancouver 24 hours after we put it on the market. It was insane. Like nothing had moved for 3 months in that area. And 24 hours after we put it on, we got the most amount of money we could have out of it. And it was meant to be. It was divinely inspired. And we have been through this entire process knowing that while we are physically here working and we are physically here holding space, it is much bigger than us. It is guided by something tremendously beautiful and benefic. And so we're very much just caretakers. And so long as we stay in alignment with the Most High of what the center is supposed to be, I truly believe that, it will continue to thrive in that very magical way.
Wonderful. Well, again, we're speaking with Shivani Howe, and she is from Ishtadev Niwas Yoga Center and Farm, and they are near Kimberley, BC. And Shivani, I'm curious, how does it work at this yoga center? Do people from Kimberley come in for regular yoga classes? Is it a retreat? What's it like there?
So we have a local community. And we have community classes. Every week we have asana classes for the community. We also have weekly hovens that the community is invited to. And those are on a by donation basis. We are run by a nonprofit, and we really want to get back to the authentic roots of how the transmission and the knowledge of yoga is passed. And that is not a business-based paradigm. It is a by donation paradigm. So we have the community classes, and then we have weekend retreats. Some of our weekend retreats are by donation. Some of them have fixed fees, and the ones that have fixed fees, we always have a scholarship position for, because we truly believe that nobody should ever be turned away if they genuinely want to experience sorry, my son just came home. No, my son just came home. And he was not supposed to come in because we're going straight up to Davey.
Oh, that's okay.
So go up to Davey and get a drink. It's okay, my love. Thank you. Oh, it's a three-eyed bird from swim camp. Look at that. Isn't that precious? I do. I love you. Sorry.
That's okay.
So we have weekend retreats. Some of them are by donations. Some of them have scholarships with fixed fees. And then we have week-long retreats. And then we have a 3-week residency and teacher training. And then we also have our Karma Yoga residencies, which are up to a month, and they're full by donation. And live a yogic lifestyle, come to all the community classes, come to all the hovens, and we feed you, we nourish you, we bring you into that frequency of what this place has to offer, and it's all completely by donation. And then we have our outreach project, which I work with private sessions with people every week without them paying the full fee, and the outreach project is supported by the patrons of the community, which donate between $1 a month to it to $108 a month, and anywhere in between. And it can be increased month by month, it can be decreased by month. You can cancel it altogether, you can jump right in there, and on the first of every month, that small amount comes out of your credit card. And that money goes to the society, and that money is allocated to the amount of hours and to offering the scholarships and to working with people with PTSD or in deep transformation. So it's
wonderful.
Really awesome.
So again, we're speaking with Shivani Howe, and she's from Ishtadev Niwas Yoga Center and Farm. And so if people want to get involved with the patronage, what's the best way to contact you?
Well, you can find our patronage information on our website. And if you go to livingyogasociety.org, again, that's livingyogasociety.org, it'll take you to our Ishtadev Niwas webpage. And then you can go to donate. And it has a monthly donate. Or if you want to go straight to patronage, the website is patreon.com. That's patreon.com. And you just type in SHTADEVNIWAS, and it says become a patron, and you can plop in how much you want there. Just do know that it is in US dollars. So if you want to donate $20 a month, put in 15, and then the exchange rate will bump it up to like 18.
All right, thank you. And if you're watching on YouTube, I will post some of those links in the description below. And you can find the link at livingyogasociety.org. So Shivani, I'd really love to know more about the karma yoga. I have heard, there are some ashrams. There's another one in BC that I know about, where they do this month-long karma yoga. So what exactly, for people who aren't familiar, what exactly is karma yoga?
So karma yoga is meditation and action. And in our lineage, which is the lineage brought down from Shivananda through Satyananda of the Saraswati lineage, is Shivananda always used to say, if you want higher knowledge, right, which is connected to Agnya chakra, which is in the mind, if you want higher knowledge in states of meditation, serve. Because the highest action of the third dimension is Manipura chakra, which is the home of action. So when you purify Manipura chakra, which is the home of action, it's mirrored to the height of the fifth dimension, which is the mind. So the higher states of consciousness come spontaneously, rather than sitting there chanting Om, or sitting there trying to unthink your way into thinking. The fastest way to evolve, so the teachings say, is to practice karma yoga. Now, what that means is to come into action without identification with doership. And it sounds easy, but it can be very, very challenging. And it's the fastest way to purify the ego into right relationship. As ahimsa, or non-violence, is the very first teaching of yoga. We don't want to kill the ego. We don't want to get rid of it. We don't want to like squish it, right? All we want to do is bring it into right relationship with the soul, so that we can maximize our potential as experience, right? So karma yoga is a state of mind. When you come to ashram literally meaning place of work, and it's not just physical labor work, it's work on the inside. This is what ashram actually means, is to work on the inside, is to evolve. So when we come into karma yoga, we can be doing any action, from writing an essay, to cleaning the floor, to doing the dishes, to feeding the animals, to learning how to spin wool, to crocheting a hat, to any action whatsoever, to making bread, to but it's where is your mind and who is in action. Because when you come into a state of karma where you are not the doer, the actions that you're performing are burning karma, but because there's no identification of doership, you're not accruing karma. So it's the fastest way to balance out your karmic pot, is to be in action without attachment to the fruits of that. And once you learn the skill of it in ashram, you can take it into any action and any perspective outside in the world. Whether your actions are at your job where you're actually getting paid for it or not, it becomes the state of mind of who is the doer, where is the payment coming from, who is the payment coming out to. Punamida, 1 + 1 is 1, 1 - 1 is 1. You can never take anything from the divine, because it's always taking and giving onto itself, and therefore it is completely connected. So it's a shift in perspective. And from the Western mind, it can be a little bit crunchy. So we have people, and they come out and they practice karma yoga. They start to watch the raga and dishwar of the mind, which is the likes and dislikes. I don't like cleaning the toilet. I like spinning wool. How about you clean? I'll spin the wool. Instead of going, what is the action that is needed in this moment? And how can my life force energy go to performing that action with complete one-pointedness, with full effort, but with no expectation? And so this is the practice of karma yoga.
Wow. So what do you find? I mean, you started yoga at some point. What was your experience the first time you did karma yoga? What did you take out of it after that experience?
My first experience of karma yoga was in the ashram in 2006. I had done my teacher training. I was this 25-year-old white Western woman who, was a yoga teacher. And I walk into this ashram with this fully bona fide enlightened master. Like, this gentleman was love embodied. It was just phenomenal. The frequency that came off his presence left your mind completely blank and left your heart completely cradled. It was the most delicious experience of unconditional love I have ever had. And the teachings of that ashram are, you come to ashram and you want to practice asana, and you want to stand on your hands, and you want to be taught meditation, and you want all of these things. You come to ashram and you just serve. So we go to ashram and we clean the floors. They're like, you need hip openers. Here's a rag and here's a marble floor. Go for it. And your Western mind is like, what? I came to the other side of the world to learn yoga, and you want me to what? And you watch your mind as you go through the process, and you're like, this sucks. I'm never coming back here again. And then like 10 minutes later, you stop and you feel this energy going over you, and you're like, maybe I should extend my stay. Yeah, I think like, maybe I'm never going to leave. This place is like heaven on earth. And then half an hour later, you're like, this sucks. I'm out of here. And you just watch your mind, the monkey mind, just goes insane, because the base frequency of these ashrams are so much higher than anything we experience in the West, that it takes your mind through action to purify enough to even just sit comfortably in the flow. But when you go, you know, when we take students every year, and I say, if the ashram asks you to do something, you say, I'm here for 3 weeks, whatever you want me to do. If you want me to spend 3 weeks cleaning a toilet with a toothbrush, I will do it. If you want me to spend 3 weeks researching a book for the library to be created, I will do that. Whatever you want, I'm here to serve. And if they ask you to do something and your first response is, I don't really want to do that. I can't do that. My back is sore. Oh, I don't really feel like doing that. You know, I think I should do laundry today. Like, if there's any response, emotional response that comes from you towards that action that's not, okay, no problem, what do you need? I'm here to serve. Then you know it's your shit coming to the surface, and that action is actually going to help you purify into right action, right? And so we go back every year, and we go and do a month of service in this particular ashram, because it's a recalibration of the deepest parts of your soul. So you go thinking you're going to learn yoga and do all of this asana and stuff, and you go and you serve and you feed people and you fold blankets and you sweep floors and you chop vegetables and you do whatever is asked to be done. And it's beautiful. It is such a homecoming to your heart when you realize there's nothing to do except offer yourself unconditionally. And then you come home and you try and integrate those experiences into your life in the West. And then you go back the next year and you take another layer, and then you come home and you integrate it, and, you know.
Wonderful. Again, we're speaking with Shivani, how she is from Ishtadev Niwas Yoga Center and Farm near Kimberley, British Columbia. You can find them at livingyogасociety.org. And I'm curious, Shivani, what happens to Ishtadev Niwas when you go to India for a month?
Well, as a society, so we have a board of directors, and the board of directors are trained to hold space. We don't run retreats when we're not here, when we're in India, but somebody is here, somebody is holding sacred space, somebody is doing their practices, somebody's doing the fire ceremonies, the havans, and looking after the animals. And so we kind of go into hibernation mode a little bit, but we have one of the board members or a trusted community member is always here holding space as sacred. So.
Okay, so what are these havans? Tell me more about that.
Havans are amazing. They are a practice. It's also called a homa or a fire puja, a havan, and there's different words used in different localities in India for the same practice. It's where you have a kun, which is like a square. It's like a upside down pyramid. Like the base of it, the top of it is square, and then it goes down like an upside down triangle. It's called a kun, and you offer each of the 5 elements into the fire. So you have ghee, you have this thing called samagri, combination of different herbs.
Could you repeat that, please? You cut off a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry, love. Repeat which bit?
You said ghee and then something about herbs.
Oh, samagri. So ghee, samagri is a collection of herbs that gets offered to the fire. Then you also have water with a flower gets offered to the fire. Then you have mantra, because mantra, the root words of mantra comes from manis, which means mind, and tra is trioti, which means to liberate. So the frequencies of the Sanskrit, as you're chanting it, liberates the mind from its perception of identification with the third dimension being. So we offer each of the 5 elements in incense into this kun, and what it does is the fire purifies every element. So if you think of, the earth element has its highest potential and frequency. The water element has its highest potential and frequency. If it's polluted, then it's dirty. So in these kuns, we offer through mantra, through ghee, which is clarified butter, incense, water, and we chant a series of different mantras depending on what your intention is, or what day of the week it is, or what you're aspiring for in terms of energy and intention. And you offer it unconditionally into the kun, and it creates a force field of frequency that imbibes a purification of every one of those elements on every level of dimensional consciousness. And there was I believe it was in Australia, but don't quote me on that, but there was a research was done on the practice of these fire ceremonies, that they create a force field of up to like 1 kilometer in diameter, and they actually affect every plant, every being, everything. And so in our lineage, fire ceremonies are a big part of our sadhana, and we offer those unconditionally to every being, everywhere, for healing, health, and prosperity.
And how often do you do these fire ceremonies?
Well, as I said, you can do different ones for different days of the week. Right now, we do one every Saturday. It's called the Mahamrityunjaya mantra havan. Mahamrityunjaya is the ultimate healing mantra. It's a Shiva mantra, so it destroys ignorance, allows healing to come in. And so we chant that 108 times with the fire ceremony every Saturday, to offer everybody in the world health, peace, and prosperity. And you can do havans. You can do a personal sadhana of havan. You can do one on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays. You can do one every day for a week. You can set a sadhana of doing one every 3 days a week for a month. You can use, they're a tool, and you create them as a sadhana of your commitment to doing them, and then you leave them.
Lovely. Well, again, we are speaking with Shivani Howe, and she is from Ishtadev Niwas Yoga Center and Farm, and they are near Kimberley, BC, and you can find them at livingyogasociety.org, and they're also doing ongoing fundraising and patronage for that helps fund their outreach hours, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about the outreach hours, because you work with people who have PTSD, people who have cancer, people who are in major life transitions and crises. So what are the outreach hours all about? How does that work?
Well, the outreach hours, the board has dedicated 7 hours per week of one-on-one sessions with myself. And I've been working with people in deep states of transition, birth, death, eating disorders, cancer, PTSD for the last 10 years. So there's 7 hours a week that are allocated where people can apply and request to be part of the outreach program, where they get their private sessions by donation. They pay whatever they can afford. Sometimes that's $2, sometimes that's $50 instead of our hourly rate, which is $84. And the patronage, which is the community's heartbeat, holding up these people in the community that are no longer able to function. And you know, the sad thing is that by the time people come to yoga as a way of transitioning through crisis, they've often been, quote unquote, fighting and struggling for 2, 3, 4, 10 years. A lot of the first responders that we help, you know, have been doing this for 5, 10, 15 years already. Their pensions are done. Their families are gone. They haven't worked in 10 years. And they are literally at a last resort. So these are not people that you turn around and say, oh, I'm sorry, you can't afford the hourly rate of what we value ourselves at. No, that is not what yoga is about. Yoga is about, how can I serve? What do you need? Okay, you need this many hours. We turn to the community and we say, these people need help. I can physically help in hours, but I personally cannot afford to work that many hours and not be supported. With karma, there always needs to be a reciprocation of somehow, some way, some little bit. So the community comes together and we say, we add their heart healing for the community, and they donate $1 a month, $5 a month, whatever, it doesn't matter. And we're aiming to have 500 heartbeats in a year. Right now we have 11. And 11 very beautiful heartbeats they are too. But we are hoping to have 500 heartbeats within a year, because it's not about the money that gets donated. It's about the collective consciousness of tangible heartbeats saying, these people need to be held. These people need help, and we're going to be part of that. And so that's, you know, in India, that is more traditionally how it's done. When you go to a master or a head teacher, they do not charge, because the divine always supports from the larger community. And you go to ashram and you donate what you have, and that money gets turned into helping those that can't help themselves. And, you know, the teaching that we come from is, look at what your community needs, see where the hole is, and your job as a sannyas is to fill that hole. It doesn't matter whether you're building wells or cooking food or building houses for people who have nothing, or finding clothing for people who have no clothing, or for working with PTSD when all of the other Western modalities have been exhausted. You know, you find where your community needs help and you help. And so this is what our aspiration is to do.
Wonderful. So Shivani, how do you find, I'm sure you've done research and learned from your teachers as well. What is it about yoga that helps people with PTSD or whatever the crisis or transition is that they're experiencing?
Well, I think one of the biggest points about how yoga works, crisis literally comes from the root word meaning a decision in illness, where you're once you're in a crisis, you're in a fork in the road. You're either going to recover or you're going to pass over. And this is the true definition of what crisis is. And myself, when I, in my early 20s, came into a crisis in Toronto, I was severely debilitated with endometriosis. And at 21, my surgeon said, you need to have a hysterectomy. You're never going to have children. Or you're going to have surgeon every year until you figure this out. I mean, that's how bad my endometriosis was. And I had 3 lots of laparoscopic surgery in 2.5 years. And I kind of looked at the sky one night and I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm out of here. This sucks. I live alone in Toronto. I am attracting gentlemen that are not kind. I am in work that I'm good at, but I'm not thrilled by. You know, I don't have any fulfillment. I drink too much. I do other things that are not healthy for me. I'm in pain. I am in physical, emotional, and spiritual pain. And I looked to the sky and I said, I'm out of here unless something changes. And within 2-3 weeks, I met somebody who introduced me to somebody who did my Vedic astrology chart, who said, you need to meet this woman. And I went to the other side of Toronto and I met this woman who opened the door to her house. And I looked at her and I went, whoa, whatever you've got, I need it. And she looked at me and she fed me pizza because I hadn't eaten that day. And I handed her every penny I had, which was $3,000, which was the price of the teacher training for 9 months. And she changed my life. Within 6 months, every practice, every teaching, everything that she asked me to do, I didn't have a single symptom of endometriosis. Not one. And have not had a single symptom left since. I now have a healthy 6-year-old son. So clearly I could have children. You know, like what we were told isn't necessarily the truth. It can be the reality, but reality and truth are two very different things. And yoga teaches you a bigger picture. It's a perspective that looks at how the soul is having a human experience and then breaks down the human experience like steam to water to ice. That your physical reality is a mirror of your emotions. Your emotions are a mirror of your belief, and your belief is the mirror of the karma that you're digesting. And when you can trace symptoms through your body, your emotions, your mind, and understand the patternings of the karma that are coming to the surface at this time, it gives you a map. It gives you understanding. It gives you context. And it gives you something to pinpoint to. So when I worked with endometriosis, endometriosis is of the uterus, and it's of Swadhisthana chakra, one's own abode. Who are you as the feminine? And it's also the home of guilt. It's the home of innate joy. It's the home of likes and dislikes. It's the home of sorrow. It's the home of believing that you are lovable. And when you have a fundamental belief that you are fundamentally flawed and that you are fundamentally unlovable, that belief comes into this emotion of deep guilt, which is the guilt being the feeling that I've somehow done something wrong. I may not know what I've done in this lifetime. I may not be able to pinpoint it, but my insides say that I am disgusting and that I have done something wrong. Guilty for that. And that manifests into what we call in the West endometriosis. And so when my teacher taught me how to do that through chakra psychology, and she would have me sit there and say, I am lovable. I am lovable. Frick off, I'm not lovable. I am lovable. And she made me sit there and say it over and over and over again until I would burst into tears and go, no, you don't understand. I have done something wrong. And she's like, that's it. There, that belief is the ignorance, is the wrong thinking. As the soul, you're remembering something that's not needed now. And so she helped me to realign my belief, which helped me realign the feeling of being lovable. And as soon as I could truly feel, symptoms went away. And then when I was pregnant, I also experienced thyroid cancer, and we worked it in exactly the same way. I have now been cancer-free for 6 years, and I didn't have radiation. I did not have chemotherapy. I am not saying that everybody can do that, but I am saying that it is possible, and it is tremendously accessible to helping people give perspective to their experiences so that they minimize suffering. As the Buddhists say, pain is not optional. Pain is part of it. Suffering is optional, you know? And yoga gives you the context, the tools, the ability to minimize suffering, come into right relationship, because every illness is a teacher. You know, in this way, in the West, we're like, fight cancer, we have to beat this. We have to, push through that. We have to get over that. And it's the wrong attitude. In the collective consciousness, we are invoking violence against a teacher. Imagine if there was a bunch of 8th graders that went tooth and nail at their teacher. They sure as heck would not graduate the class, And when you get sick, you want to graduate. So you have to start listening to what that illness is trying to say, because it's trying to show you something. And through yoga, it's showing me where the pieces are coming through that need to be learned. And when you've learned the lesson, the teacher has no more use for you, no problem, right? And so this is how we work through it. Now with PTSD, it's a crisis of soul. It's a big picture karma to be integrating, because our Western modality doesn't have the framework to give the context for it. It keeps pushing a soul experience into a 3-dimensional box of the brain and the neurons and the cortex and the blah, 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 right? But when you expand it, you soften a little bit and you come into understanding that it's reconciling the head with the heart. And when this reconciliation can't happen, we need to rework the nervous system into right understanding about why does trauma happen? Why do horrible, horrible things happen to our fellow human beings and to ourselves? Why is there so much pain? Why is there so much suffering? And then we understand, because until you have cried, you don't know joy. Right? It's the perspective of duality, and that as a soul, we're here to transcend duality. So it's a huge, rapid evolution, is my feeling of PTSD. It's an opportunity for tremendous, rapid evolution of the soul, because it's coming from the big picture. It can't be fixed with a pill. It has to be addressed from the soul's perspective, through the nervous system. Strengthen the nervous system first, because that has had the fracture where the past trauma is not being put into long. It's floating around like space junk, and at every opportunity, it's crashing into the present moment, and you're straight back into it on a full emotional response. So we strengthen the nervous system, and we start to heal that split. And as the sympathetic nervous system has been going for too long at too high a rate, the parasympathetic nervous system is too tired to try and balance it up all the time. So not only are you constantly in shock, you're unable to come into the relaxation response, which is what's needed to heal the nervous system. So the yoga techniques we practice, they help to bring down the sympathetic, and they help to build up the parasympathetic. From that place, we come into practices that allows the understanding of, we call it the koshas, or the sheaths of understanding of how these traumas filter through. And then we're able to do the practices where you spontaneously, nobody's asking you to relive anything like some of the Western practices do. You have, it's called antamona, inner silence, where the practices, you have spontaneous thoughts come through, and you witness them, not from disassociation, but from the strengthening of discernment, going, here and now, I'm sitting in a room with my teacher. This is my reality. This is a memory. To know the difference between those two is discernment. And so we strengthen the discernment so that people over time, it takes time, are able to use that discernment to go, here is a memory. Look at my emotional response I have to that. Then the next time the memory spontaneously comes to the surface, here is the memory. Look, there's less emotional response to it. It's been proven, it's been done for the last 20 years in Hobart with Vietnam vets and Iraqi vets, and it works well in a holistic approach to it, of the postures, the pranayama, the meditation, the lifestyle, the food, the context, the philosophy. It's a big picture thing, and that's what we hold space for here.
Hmm. Wonderful. Well, again, we're almost at a time. We're speaking with Shivani Howe. She is from the Ishtadev Niwas Yoga Center and Farm near Kimberley, British Columbia, Canada. You can find them at livingyogасociety.org. And if you want to be one of those heartbeats and want to contribute to that, they have a fundraising patronage project. You can find links to that if you just go to their website, livingyogасociety.org. And if you're watching on YouTube, I will post links in the description below as well. We just have a few minutes left in the show, but Shivani, I'm curious, before pardon me, before you met the woman who taught you your yoga training, how much experience did you have with yoga?
I was your regular Saturday morning asana class person for about 3 years. When I was diagnosed with endometriosis, my surgeon went, "You're really stressed out. You need to go do yoga." I'm like, "What's yoga?" Okay. So, 1 class a week, 2 classes a week, like the majority of North America does now. And so I did that, when I was in New Zealand, when I moved to LA, when I moved to Toronto, I was always connected with a studio. But then when I met my teacher, and she's like, yeah, no. This is what we're learning. And you're like, whoa, that is so much more than I realized what was going on. And so, everybody comes to it in their own way. But I was very, very grateful that came at that time.
Thank you. And Shivani, I'm curious, you mentioned earlier in the hour how in the West, many services are offered as a business, and the yoga that you do is offered by donation. And I'm just wondering if you have anything to say about the difference and yeah.
The business of yoga, in my perspective, and in my opinion, the business of yoga in the West is shifted the teachings into a completely different level of consciousness, and that level tops out very, very low and the totem of what the teachings actually embody. The commerce of yoga is an oxymoron to what yoga is. Yoga is union. It's about bringing everything together, of everything being connected. It's not about only for the people that can afford $18 for a yoga class. It's not about only if you have the resources and the funds, can you afford these teachings. And when you go to India and you see that, these masters, I mean, they really are masters. They really are omnipresent, and they have the boon of Vak I have experienced directly when somebody says, go and do this, this will happen. And 3 months later, boom, that's exactly what happens. These masters have transcended the gunas, and they're not charging, right? They are saying, if you're inspired, offer something as a donation, and we will help serve the local community with what you. Now, if they really are masters and that's what they're doing, then what the heck are we doing in the West when you have your 200-hour teacher training and boom, you're in a room of 60 people teaching them all how to do a one-handed handstand? We really have missed the boat in the West. But there is an evolution, and we had to start somewhere. As the West's consciousness, we had to go for action first, because we don't have the discipline to go for lifestyle first within the yamas and niyamas before we get to the asana in terms of the 8 limbs of Patanjali's yoga. The West, it's the way our psyche needed to get to it. And so we will evolve into being able to honor the teachings in a more authentic way that it has been held in India for so long. And we at Niwas and with the Living Yoga Society are really aspiring to lead that charge, of saying we cannot be practicing in the Western way when we are honoring the teachings and the direct influence and experience of these masters in the East. So we're going to change the game. And so that's what we're doing with the patronage page.
Beautiful. Well, Shivani, I'm curious because I feel like that a lot of businesses are that way. And you mentioned earlier about how the karma, how there needs to be some kind of exchange. So I'm wondering if there are ways for people who are offering some kind of service, whether it's a spiritual service or any kind of service, how they can tap into more of that karmic energy rather than bottom line and still have a livable income while serving in a different type of way.
Totally. And I think it's a process, because a lot of what we need to live and the amount we need to make in the West is from the paradigm of consumerism. And so you need to earn money in the paradigm of consumerism to keep up your consumerism. Whereas in the East, the whole paradigm of the way they live and what they need to live and how much they need to live is completely different. So what we've found here, while we are still in the West and we live in British Columbia, which we always joke is bring cash, is a very expensive province to live in. That, you know, when you, my husband is a nurse. He works at the hospital. We also bake bread, and the bread helps to subsidize the overhead for the center so that we can run the classes by donation. You have to get smart as to what your priorities for. We get all of our clothes from the Salvation Army. We only go to town once a week to save on gas unless he's going to the hospital. We go to the movies once a year. Literally, I go and see a cartoon once a year because it's always for my kid, right? A kid, once a year, we go to the movies. We eat out twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. So when you look at what is my priority and how much do I actually need to fulfill that priority, often what you need becomes a lot less.
Beautiful. Well, we are just about out of time, Shivani. I'm wondering, what do you want to leave listeners and viewers with today?
What do I want to leave listeners and viewers with today? Gratitude that we are all in this together, and every single heartbeat has a choice at every moment of every day, whether the choice of being in the future, the choice of being in the past, or the choice of being in the present. And I'm very, very grateful that you've offered your heartbeats of the last hour to be in the present, listening to me chat with the beautiful Marie. And never underestimate that the smallest changes in your life can really shift a perspective into a deep appreciation for the highs and the lows, and that you are never alone. If you are very challenged with anything, you are not alone. There is help. You can get it, and don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much, Shivani. It's been such a beautiful experience speaking with you and listening to your experience and your stories. So amazing. And again, we've been speaking with Shivani Howe, and she is from the Ishtadev Niwas Yoga Center and Farm near Kimberley, British Columbia. And you can find them at livingyogasociety.org if you'd like to visit them or go take a class or do karma yoga for a month, or if you want to get involved and help them raise funds for their outreach hours and to help sustain the ashram and the farm and the center. So again, it's livingyogasociety.org. And I want to send you lots and lots of love. Thank you so much for watching or listening. And thank you, Shivani, for being with us. I love you all so much. Be well. Namaste.